very important session of the outcome-based teaching learning model and the Bloom's taxonomy is a very important area for research and development nowadays in the world, because we know very well that the NBA and NAAC is very strongly promoting the concept of outcome-based education. But till now, the Bar Council of India has not defined about the outcomes of any of the programs. Only they have given some of the basic fundamentals about some of the kind of the syllabus they provided, the guideline provided, but they have not defined what is going to be the outcome of the legal education in the country, about the BLE program, PBLE program. So they suggest a lot of programs, but they have not defined till now what will be the outcome, what is the actual target about the those programs. So those were the good universities who are going to follow the NAAC inspection, or those who want to make a very successful kind of legal education, they themselves take initiative to define the outcomes. So when I was in the other universities, in fact, in UPS, also in Kilgotia, currently in GT Goenka, we always try to define the outcomes, and also we follow the kind of course plan by the faculty. Sometimes it is very challenging if faculty is very young, very new, that how to define and find out the what should be the outcome. Because if you're not very clear what is going to be the outcome, how you are going to define the kind of your objectives, define the syllabus, the plan, your evaluation methods in that course. Because every course is different and every course requires different kind of strategy to be followed. If you're teaching the practical courses, CPC, CRPC, or maybe drafting, pleading, conveyancing, all these courses, it may require different kind of strategy. If anybody is teaching, for example, human rights, and then NGO-related courses or courses linked to the fundamental rights, he requires different strategy. Or somebody is teaching a kind of courses of international trade, contract, corporate law, he has to find a different strategy. And then if somebody is teaching a very emerging course like cyber law, cyber crime, cyber security, then he has to follow a different strategy. So it means that it is very important for the faculty to understand that from day one, what is the objective of the course, and then what is to be method to be followed, what is the level of the students, and what is the ultimate target. So I am a strong believer of the industry-linked education, because being the professional course, law should try to satisfy the requirements of the market, or maybe governments, maybe the kind of a judiciary or clients and all. So if we try to have some benchmarking, so I'm a very strong believer that I always try to connect the education of law with the market. Market means that the market means the kind of cases coming, the problems in future. For example, if you go back to 30 years back, there was no question about the cyber law, cyber crime, cyber security, mobile crimes. If you go back to 40 years back, there was no challenge for the environmental law. Okay. Now currently we have a lot of new laws are coming in future. So this means that even the legal education is very dynamic and always go on changing. For example, post COVID-19, there will be a lot of change in the market. Entire market is changed. Now there are a lot of the challenges of the performance of the contracts. And now every company, or they are going to review their contract, they renovate the contract, may be going to sign the new contract. So it means that now the entire market of post-COVID is going to change. And good part is that the law profession is going to flourish. But I see there will be a lot of litigation once the COVID is going over, because some of the people will be really having challenge to perform the contract. They have genuine ground. The contract is going to be frustrated. They can take the benefit of the section 56 of the Indian Contract Act or 23 of the Contract Act. But there are people who will try to misuse the timing of the COVID and try to do kind of the blackmailing of the clients just to do illegal enrichment. So my point is that kind of a law faculty should be very clear from the day one that what is going to be the objective. Now the question is that how to plan the kind of the outcomes. So generally what happens if you join a law school, generally every law school have very well defined kind of the, because each law school is a part of university, or if you're teaching in a national university, a full-fledged university, So always there is a vision. So university has a vision, and then there is a mission. So if university is trying to become a center of excellence in legal education, then in that case there should have a mission. How they are going to become excellent or excel in legal education, mission should be defined. And then you have to go for this uh, program educational objectives. So this is still the objective of the law school. What the law school is going to attain in when somebody will pass out after 2 to 3 years. So what is going to be the target outcome for the law school? For example, if some law school is focusing on the corporate world, what is going to be the student success rate, or going to be the employment once they will pass out after 2 to 3 years the passing the timeline? What is going to be the kind of the employment rate, market success? Then we have the program outcomes. So a particular law school have a graduate attitude. We say the program educational objectives. Then each law school may have 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 programs. So they may have BLB program, they have BBLB program, or BCom LLB, BSc LLB, BTech LLB. So all these programs are different programs. That's why these programs may have different outcomes to be achieved. For example, if you're teaching a BLB course, it has different kind of dynamics, and somebody is teaching a BBLB course, it has different dynamics. Because the focus of the BLB program is more kind of the social aspect, more kind of the human rights and the rights aspects, more kind of litigation orientation. And if somebody is teaching a course in the BBLB or BCom LLB, focus is more kind of business aspects, so more commerce, trade, marketing, finance, import, export, easing policies. So orientation can be different. So that's why these two programs may have different kind of outcomes. Now the next point is the course outcome, where the requirement of the faculties is kind of the challenge of faculty starts, because up till the program outcome, it is defined by the board of studies and the academic council, dean, director, and all. They discuss and debate. But every time in each course, the concerned faculty has to define the course outcome. And to define the course outcome, he has already university vision, university mission. He has university program specific. He has the program educational objectives, and sometimes there is program specific outcome. For example, there are currently 4 kind of the courses by Bar Council of India. For example, somebody is running maybe just LLB, a 3-year LLB course, just LLB. So it's a first generation course. Then we have seen in 1986 when the NLS Bangalore started, they have first experiment of integration of BA with law. So BA LLB started. That is second generation course. Then we have seen some developments. This started in 1991. We have the kind of opening Indian markets. And we started some kind of specialization course. So we said, let us start giving the honors degree in law. So we have BLB with honors. It was general honors. So that is third generation course. Now currently we have now 4th generation legal education. That is the BA LLB honors in IPR, or BLB honors in corporate law, or BLB honors in cyber law, like this. So this is if anybody is teaching in this model, he is teaching the 4th generation kind of legal education model. In that case, this particular program has some program specific objectives. So somebody is teaching just like a LLB course or LLB honors may have different outcome to be achieved. Somebody is teaching BLB honors in cyber law, he has some specific objectives to be achieved. So these are mostly defined. So vision, mission, the graduate attitudes, or maybe we say program educational objectives. Then we have the program outcomes and program specific outcomes. These are mostly defined. You can get a copy from the university and college. We are going to define the course outcomes. Now the question is that how to define the course outcomes. So best thing is that we have seen in 1956, Benjamin Broom, who was the chairman of the Education Committee of America, and they were debating and discussing that how to define the course outcome. And then we have seen in 2001, because of the intervention of the internet and mobile technology and computers in 1995, because in India we have seen internet coming in 1995. Then there was a lot of other benefits, because by using the PPT or online education, blended model, blogs, and then YouTube channels, you can have some other support to find the outcome and utilize in the process of the legal education. So in 2001, some of the students of the Benjamin Group, they have redefined the kind of outcome, and there was some changes started. So now the job of the faculty starts from here, that how to define the outcome, and then how to define and find out the evaluation methods of the teaching learning process. So I'm just uploading one clip, and by that clip I'll try to explain that what is the so this is the, in fact, it was the this is the original one that was by Benjamin Bloom. So they have to given the various levels of the learning process. In fact, there are 3 levels of learning process.
Sir, we are not getting your sound. Sir, your mic is mute. Hello, sir, we are not getting your sound.
You are getting now?
Yes, sir, we are getting. Yes, sir, you are getting now. It's fine, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you for informing here. So, yeah. You are getting the slides?
Yes, sir. It's
Yeah.
fine, sir.
Yeah. So there are just saying that there are 3 levels of the learning. One is the cognitive domain, that is the learning by the kind of utilization of the brain work, when brain is utilized for learning process. Then we have the affective domain, when the utilization of the emotion and attitude is there. And third level is the kind of motor, where the psychological things are involved. So best learning will be possible when the faculty is trying to utilize all 3 levels of learning of the student. And on this, depending on these 3 levels of learning, because the Benjamin Bloom was the educational psychologist, and he has given the very well-defined idea that how to engage the students 3 levels of the learning to get the outcome realized. Because in the outcome-based model, the faculty is going to define the outcome, and how that outcome can be achieved. He has to follow these 3 levels, and then the Benjamin Bloom, he has defined these levels. So in the actual one, what was developed in 1956 by Benjamin Bloom and team, he being the chairman of the committee, they set these 6 levels, starting from knowledge. Then we have the comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation. But in what happened in 2001, there is slight change. What happened? That knowledge has become the remembering, because they have said knowledge means what? Knowledge, the whole idea of the basic learning is that you have to remember the things. So if you remember the things, your first level is achieved. And then earlier it was the second level was comprehension. Now it is understanding. So if you are able to remember the things, you are trying to understand the things, and then you can apply it and analyze, evaluate, and create. In the original one, synthesis was there, then evaluation was the last. But now currently, the ultimate thing is creating. So somebody is starting a learning process of something, he should try to understand that thing, then he should try to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So these are the six levels of learning, and these six levels are on stepping stones. So remembering require very, very less involvement of these three kind of the domains of learning process. In fact, in remembering, understanding, in applying, you utilize mostly of the very basic cognitive kind of process. In analysis, evaluation, and creation, creation being the highest kind of the skill requirement, because somebody can create something when he is really competent enough and understand everything. Then he can create something. For example, there is a area of domestic violence. Okay. For domestic violence, there may be some kind of basic principles that social norms, religious norms, maybe family norms are there. And then you are able to know what are those norms, remember. Then you understand those norms, and then you apply those norms, and then you can make analysis, which family, which level, which person is not following norms, and where is the gap. And then you evaluate all the levels, and then you can create. So if the current law you feel is not okay, you are able to create a new law, or you can suggest the amendments. It means that you are able to create something. So this is the kind of grades, stepping stones learning process, starting from remembering to creating. Actually, in 1956, it was starting from knowledge and going to evaluation. But currently, it is remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And in fact, Benjamin Bloom has given a Bloom wheel. He has given a complete wheel of the learning process. In the center, what happens? See, in center, these are six levels are there. Starting from understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And then these six levels have the relevant kind of the associated verbs. That, and then we have then extended words. If you, for example, for how to test the creating, the faculty can then take the next level of that how interrogation, invent, make, manage, modify, plan. If anybody can integrate, invent, make, or manage, or modify, or plan, or produce, or process, propose, rewrite, and then to do all these things, what he can do? He can do assembling of the codes. See at the end here, concept development, create an application, experiment, formula, plan, okay, invention, data collection. So all these things can be done. So when you are going to plan and going to test these kind of levels, you can use these verbs when you define the outcomes. And this is the kind of lower level skill to the higher order skill. So this is the very important area that defines the kind of the levels and then and kind of in the increasing order. So starting from this lower order thinking skill to higher order thinking skill. In remembering, what you can do, you can find out how the person is going to utilize whether he is going to identify, or he can label the things, he can make a list, or he can recall, he can recognize, match, name, selected. For example, if you are actually teaching a course of the hospitality, you are teaching how to make the dish. So if you're teaching that how to make a dish, and in that case, you are teaching that how to make a dish. Uh, in that process, what you can do, your first initial level of the target is that you must ensure that everybody is going to remember the things. For example, you are going to teach somebody how to make, for example, biryani. To making a biryani, in that biryani, there are a lot of items are utilized. There may be some kind of rice, some kind of onion, masala, some kind of non-veg. So the person who is going to learn how to make biryani, first level is that he has to remember and understand, identify what are the items utilized. He can label which is masala, which is the rice, which is the other items. He can make list, he can recall without seeing, he can recognize, he can match, he can name, he can select, he can tell. So this is the first level. Second level is that he is able to understand, classify, compare, contrast, demonstrate. He can then explain, he can extend, illustrate, he can interpret, he can outline, he can relate, show, summarize, and translate. And then third category is that he is able to apply. So if you give that person all these raw materials of making biryani, he is able to apply.
Hello, sir, we are not getting your sound.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Now it's
You
okay,
getting
sir.
me? I think there is some problem of the network is there.
Yes.
Yeah. And then evaluating. So in the evaluation process, if you are able to evaluate, that's why for the evaluation process, we generally select that those person who have the very good level of knowledge. For example, everybody cannot become the PhD examiner, or
Sir,
everybody.
sorry to interrupt, sir. We are not getting your slide. Will you kind enough to share the slides?
Okay. Everyone, just share. It has come.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then the next part is, so we're talking about the evaluation process. When the students are able to evaluate something, any concepts or any kind of theory, you are able to achieve that particular kind of the level. And then next level is kind of creating. So creating the even for evaluation process, if you have to evaluate, it's not very easy. If you understand properly, then you are able to analyze and then you can evaluate. So that's why evaluation of the student performance is not a very easy job. We give mostly senior faculty, and then we expect the student to learn the skill of evaluation. So they will be doing only once they are get the proper kind of the confidence, and then we have to test this particular skill. And the next part is the creation. So creation is generally at UG level. It is very difficult to expect from the student to create some new knowledge, new theory, new thoughts. And generally it is very challenging. But all the top law school generally they have the project model, they have the seminar model. In the project model, students are expected to write a project report and write the conclusion, write the recommendation, and they can develop a new law, amend a law. This is kind of creation of new knowledge. But it is not expected from the school level and from the student from the first year, second year, but definitely senior student we can expect creating. So creating the kind of the highest kind of level of the skill. Now the most important now point is that how to define the outcome. That because I just told you the course outcome is the job of the faculty. That how to define the course outcome, faculty will define, and then in your outcome you have to find out the competency mapping. So I just told you that even for outcome I mentioned about that program specific outcome, program educational objectives, and course outcome. So course outcome must be mapped with the kind of the specific outcome and program outcome. For example, somebody teaching law contract and he is teaching to the BBA LLB students. So for BBA LLB course, already there is a defined outcome for that program, because BBA will be the program. For there may be 10 outcomes defined for that program. And it is being a specialized course, it may have some specialized outcome to be achieved, already defined in the program, a specific outcome. And there is a law school, that law school may be very specialized law school, and that law school may have certain target to be achieved. So that law school may also have defined kind of outcome. For example, when we joined NUJS Calcutta in 2000, when Madhav Menon shifted from NS Bangalore, he started the NUJS Calcutta. Jyoti Basu brought him to change the model of the education in the entire West Bengal. He experimented in NS Bangalore social science with law. The course was BLB in NS Bangalore. But when he came to Calcutta, he was saying that now he is going to experiment the justice education. His idea was that because if you try to just produce the lawyer, we just make them learn the law and they try to argue the law, and ultimately if they're not able to get justice, it is not the success of the legal education. Ultimately everybody should try to get justice. So what he has done, we were just debating, discussing in his tenure in NUJS Calcutta in 2001 that how to transform NUJS Calcutta and make a university in the country which is experimenting the justice education. So in every outcome, every course, every objective, because every course is a course objective, the whole objective was that how this course is going to provide the justice in the society, economic, social, political, to the nation, to the human rights protection, women, children, to the clients, as a person, as a human being. So all these virtually we are trying to achieve. So that's why the person who is going to define the course outcome, he should be very well aware about all the background stories, university vision, mission, program educational objectives, program specific outcomes, program outcomes, and then course outcome. So because he is going to define, for example, he want to have 5 course outcomes. These 5 course outcomes should also be matching with the other areas I just told you. And then how to define the outcome. Okay. For example, somebody is teaching, I just told you law contract. Now he has to define the 5 outcomes. For example, he is saying that after passing this course, every student will be able to draft a contract. It means that he is saying that everybody is excellent because he is testing the highest level of skill, creating. Because after you finish the teaching of the contract and all the students are able to draft a contract, it means that you are able to get highest success because you are able to achieve the 100% target because everybody was able to draft a contract. Okay. But to reach that level, everybody first remember what are the principles of Indian contract 1872, what is offer, acceptance, consideration. They must remember all the basic sections, all the basic requirement of the contract given in section 10. Okay, all the principles. Then they should understand when the offer is accepted, when the contract is complete, why the contract is the ABCD of the corporate world, why everywhere contract is started in everybody's life, contract is very, very important, and how they can apply principles of the contract in their kind of the setting. So if you give some problem to them, they will be able to apply the principle of the contract, they can solve the problems. So generally we ask the problems in the examination. So by having those problems, they are able to apply the knowledge they have got, and then if everybody is able to apply that knowledge, it means that everybody is able to achieve that third level. Analyze. You have given 2-3 contracts, and they are able to compare Indian, because even if you see the law of communication, when the communication is complete in India and England, if you see towards miles state in England, the communication completion timing is different in India and England, because then somebody can ask question why it is different, why the framers of the Indian Contract Act made such a difference, and why towards miles case differentiating Indian approach of contract and British contract, because British market is different. British people are highly qualified. This understanding level is very, very high, and Indian population is not very qualified. The population understanding level is very, very less. So that's why communication completion time is more important in India than the England. So that's why the change is there in the law. And if you go and see civil law model, so common law model, civil law model, and then if you see the model followed in the Gulf countries, that is mostly a different model. So this way, if they're able to compare, analyze, and then evaluate whether that particular law is justifying. For example, if you see Indian IPR laws are not as per the Indian socio-economic conditions, because almost all the laws, or actually if you see before the independence and after the independence, there are very less changes taken place in Indian IPR laws. Almost all are mostly borrowed from the developed countries, because developed countries are capitalist economy, they are more twisted towards the corporate sector. India is mixed economy, but India is not purely capitalist economy. India is more kind of agricultural economy. So how you are going to have the same laws when your economic system is different? So if the students are able to make these kind of analysis, evaluation, and they're able to kind of compare the socio-economic conditions with the law, with legal policies, amendment, then it means they're able to evaluate, and they are able to get this particular skill. And then they're able to create a kind of a patent. They're able to get a patent, they're able to get a trademark, they're able to draft a patent application, the trademark application, they will get somebody a copyright. It means that they're able to create a particular knowledge. So highest level of skill. So the most important challenge is that how to find out what is going to be the 5 or 6 or 10 outcome of the course. So I told, for example, if your first outcome is that everybody will be able to understand the basic principle of contract, point number 1. They will be able to apply the law of contract in the practical settings, point number 2. They will be able to compare, analyze Indian contract law with other developed or developing countries, number 4. They will be able to create a contract. Every student, after completing this contract course, they will be able to draft a contract. Outcome number 5. Now, so you have set 5 outcomes. Now, the point is that how you are going to teach to achieve this particular outcome, because you are having the model of outcome-based teaching learning process. Now, you have defined your outcome. Now, each outcome must have sufficient suggested readings, so cases, kind of materials, articles, and in those cases, you have to then find out how you're going to test. These 5 outcomes should be tested. It means that with the model of teaching, you have to also suggest the model of evaluation. And for example, you can also then say my focus of 20% will be outcome number 1. My focus on outcome number 2 is just 10%. Outcome number 3 is just 5%. But my focus on outcome number 5 is a very, very complex skill is 40%. I'll be engaging lot of skill and effort to make everybody expert in drafting the contract. I'll do lot of experiment, lot of workshops, invite experts, engage them to draft. I'll sending to for internships in some law firm. They will go and see how contracts are drafted, how multinational contracts are drafted. So it means that You have identified the outcome. Now you have to find out what is the sufficient material to be provided to them. In your course plan, what will be the cases, what will be the principal study material you provided, and in that case, how we are going to test. So how to test the point, the outcome number one. So that's why what you can do in your, when you're going to evaluate the students, you can evaluate at different levels. So if you may have the if in the entire class has got A grade, it means that entire class is able to achieve these 5 outcomes. So they can remember, they apply, they analyze, evaluate, they can create contracts. If, for example, a student has got only 60%, it means that his level skill standard is just 60%. He can remember, he understand the law of contract, he can apply, but he cannot analyze, neither he can evaluate, neither he can create a contract. So that's why, because ultimately you have to also find out that what is the level of the outcome achieved by the students. So these are the it means that defining outcome one aspect, and then how to run the entire course, how to teach, what to be taught, how to teach, because every student may not be able to understand all these principles in one way. So sometimes you have to organize a kind of, for example, if you just go on lecturing, by your lecturing, student may not be able to develop the skill of analysis, evaluation, because they will be, if you are imparting, just go on delivering the lecture, they will be able to remembering skill they can achieve, and they also can understand. These two levels they can achieve, but applying skill, how they will achieve? Once you will be engaging them in the kind of problem solving process. You ask questions, let them answer, you take a class test, give a small problem, let them apply. Analysis. In analysis, unless you organize a debate and discussion in the classroom, they cannot develop this analysis skill. It means that in your teaching learning process, you have some kind of debating discussion in the classroom happening. Then you can achieve this kind of skill. Or evaluation. That's why you have them sometimes very complex 2-3 kind of these cases. For example, when I was teaching generally the full-time teacher, I used to always teach. For example, if I'm teaching the offer and trying to teach Indian concept, then I used to find a relevant case of England or US or any developed country, and then teach also that case and teach offer of principle of that country. What will happen? Then they will understand. If the question of offer will come in Indian Supreme Court and question of offer will come in American Supreme Court, how these two courts will behave and how they have decided the cases and given the arguments in earlier kind of occasions by the different lawyers. So that's why you have to also then, in that case, you have to have some kind of moving happening in the classroom. So one aspect of your question, the teaching was your delivery of the lecture. Second was that you have then kind of compared Indian law, foreign law, and then comparative study or different kind of the contracts, normal contracts, electronic contracts, general contracts, different form contracts, so they can compare, and they you can problem solving, so they can apply, and then you may kind of debate in the classroom, they can then analyze, and then you have moot court, your courtroom exercise, you're given a problem, and you made a team, people are arguing, giving different versions, and somebody is judging. And then you also given a kind of the problem, let them draft a contract. So my point is that setting the outcome is a very, very important skill, defining the course outcome, depending on the all the background I told, and then deciding the each lecture, because lecture number 1 can be just lecturing, lecture number 2 can be just debate in the classroom, lecture number 3 can be kind of, we made a 3-4 groups in the classroom, let them interact and discuss. Lecture number 5, you kind of given a courtroom exercise. So this means that every topic can have different method of teaching. Target is that to find out, inculcate the kind of skill you are expected to achieve at the end of the course. So that's why each lecture can be having a different kind of content, delivery, cases, method of teaching. Sometimes you utilize the PowerPoint presentation to do the comparison on the screen of different countries, different laws, different kinds. So that's why I'm a strong believer that multiple utilization of the teaching method is very important in the classroom. If you utilize one method, they will feel kind of the bored. But if you apply multiple skills, for example, if you just deliver lecture, those students who are not highly motivated, they will be losing the interest in the classroom and they will be cut off from the classroom. But if you sometimes lecturing, sometimes asking questions, sometimes showing PPT, sometimes music, sometimes video, this process you can engage the classroom fully, and then you will be able to achieve these kind of 6 outcomes and all the 6 skills. Now the second point is that because in 2001 there is a change in the Benjamin's model, Bloom's taxonomy, and they utilize the kind of involvement of multimedia methods in the teaching learning process. For example, how to use PPT, how to use multimedia, how to use blog in the kind of teaching learning process, how to use online methods, and how to do a flipped classroom. In the flipped classroom, what happened? You give the problem, and a student will come forward, and they will take the class and they will teach. So it is flip. You were teaching earlier, but now students are actually teaching in the classroom, and they are going to solve the problem by their discussion and debate. So flipped classroom model. So currently there is lot of involvement of multimedia in the classroom, and COVID-19 has justified, in fact proved, because myself being the person of the cyber law, IPR, and I'm PhD in the cyber law, and from the 1995 we are driving that how to utilize technology in the classroom, online learning, blended learning. But there are a lot of people who are opposing that. They are saying that no, PPT is used by only those faculty who are rubbish, who are actually cannot remember, who don't have any knowledge base. They will come and show PPT. No, PPT is not for that. PPT is just to utilize maximum in the classroom. By PPT, you can have music, you can have the cases, you can have video, you can engage the maximum class. You can deliver something very concrete on only points. But what happens? Somebody will just have full complete kind of the write up on the screen. He's going to read in the classroom what is supposed to speak, and then go give the points, bullet points. So the at least COVID-19 has justified the kind of involvement of the online methods. In fact, this particular FDP we are doing online mode. The kind of time, money we are saving, because everybody has the comfort of their place. Everybody is now listening and then doing self-study and getting the online screen, seeing everything. So the kind of input is given and kind of output is achieved is very, very high. So the COVID-19 has proved that even in the education system, especially in legal education, this can be a kind of very strong input, and we can really go to the college when we really require something very important to be done. Those things which can be done online, it should be online to save time, and the energy saved should be utilized in the capacity building or kind of gaining more knowledge. So this way, now this is very, very important to utilize the outcome-based model and utilize the lot of multimedia, utilize a lot of IT in the learning process. That will be great help. For example, we used to, if you see earlier days, we used to go and Xerox. So in our time in AMU, our faculty used to always give, like Sadan Mustafa, he will give at least one day in advance a kind of case, and everybody will Xerox case. So the big queue in the library to Xerox the case. And we get a copy in the evening, and then we will read a whole night the case, and next morning he will discuss the case in the classroom. But currently there is no need, because we have very, very good online journals. Even the online journals are utilizing the kind of artificial intelligence, and then you can really find the finer points of the particular case that can be utilized for your learning. You can have the average the case facts, average the kind of the argument by the different parties, dissenting opinions, and you can just focus on particular point of law. For example, if the case is taught to understand the kind of the fundamental rights of women, and but case has different dynamics, you are just looking up that final point. By artificial intelligence, you can pinpoint a particular argument given by a judge or given by the kind of party. You can locate that portion. So that is the utilization of the artificial intelligence in the online journal. So this way now the learning of the student and faculty is now very fast. They can save a lot of time. But the time saved can be utilized for getting excellence. It's not just to pass the time. So this way, this is in 2001 on the Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy. There are a lot of his actually student who has transformed. and who has given the input that how we can utilize the multimedia information technology in the learning process. Now in the recently, we can now apply the blockchain technology, you can apply the artificial intelligence, and the COVID-19 has justified that this is the time, it's time we have to go for the blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, utilizing the IT blended learning in the education system to have the very fast, solid learning and saving a lot of time and money, energy for the entire faculty, university, and the student. With these few words, I want to close here, and then I expect if there is any question is there, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, sir. We are having one question. The question from Raghunath sir. He's asking, in case of law teaching, what should be the best method to teach the vernacular medium student?
See, if there are vernacular method, in that case, we have to see. In fact, what happened, if you see the High Court, Supreme Court, the language for argumentation is English. But if you go district court, all district court, they generally follow the local language. If you see in Calcutta, Bengali is there. If you go to Maharashtra, in Bombay, Marathi is there. If you go to Allahabad, Lucknow, and Delhi, Hindi is dominant in the lower courts. So those students who are the vernacular medium, then faculty has more challenge, because if the class is mixed and satisfying the entire class, very challenging. In fact, all the top class books and material mostly on internet, all the top class online journals, they are mostly in English language. So if you are going to teach the vernacular student, because law has come from England, it is a common law model. There are a lot of English legal terms. There is no Hindi till now. We have to speak that particular English word. So teaching the vernacular student are very, very complicated and very, very challenging. So faculty, he has to do additional kind of work to also cover those students. And best part is that he can use the tutorial model. So those students who are, for example, out of 60 students, if there are 20 students who are weak in English or they want to be taught in the local language, there should be a tutorial class after the main class, and those students should be given additional kind of support as a flip learning model, or special care should be given by the faculty. So definitely you have to teach them and make them understand, because understanding is first level of learning in law. You cannot expect them creating, going to the highest 6th level. So first level of understanding will come when they will at least understand language and understand the concepts, basic principle. So that's why you have to teach in vernacular language in tutorial classes, because if you go and teach in the local language in the main class, those who are the bright students, they will get frustrated and they will feel kind of disregarded, and they feel there is no value added in their learning process, and they will feel interest in the class. They will be disinterested. So just to make the full interest, you have to teach the tutorial classes to those weaker students.
So the next question is, what is the best method of teaching procedural law?
Okay, it's a very important question. Generally, it is very challenging in India. So what happened, this is the basic problem, because if you go to US, the professor will be in the morning in the Supreme Court, High Court, in a tribunal, and arguing very landmark case, and surrounded by a lot of lawyers and judges. And after 2-3 hours, he'll be in the classroom sharing the experience he has learned in the court and a very high-profile corporate office. So the kind of input a professor in the US can provide in a classroom, Indian professor cannot provide, because we are not allowed to do on practice. So that's why these practical courses, CRPC, CPC, property law is very, very challenging for a teacher, a full-fledged teacher in India. Generally, what I prefer, unless I train faculty, sending to them law firm for internship. Even I send faculty to parliament, I send faculty to share market. They'll let them go and learn. Then come and teach corporate law and teach the constitutional law, or go to Amarchand Mangaldas and learn or go to Anandanan to learn IPR and come and teach. But it is not possible in all the law school, because I had Liberty and a very big law school I was handling, so I can do. That's why in the small law school, they should prefer to be taught by the practicing lawyers. And best is that if any retired judge is there in the local area, he's the best person to teach, because he knows finer points. If you see the bare rights and the books on all these areas, finer points are not there, which is coming every day in the practice. the person who has practiced this area, he will be able to have those minor points. So there can be co-teaching. One main teacher, one practicing lawyer just can teach. Or best is that if you can train your faculty by sending them to different internships at different locations, let them come and teach. Or maybe it can be taught by a practicing lawyer judge. That is the best method of teaching these practical courses.
The next question is from Varun. He's asking how to create the student interest in subject like jurisprudence and international trade law.
It's a very important question, very difficult question, because generally it is common kind of the feedback by student, the subject is not interesting. So how to make very interesting is very, very challenging because if a student is very, very good, they properly read, they're interested, you are very easy to drive. But if the subject like CPC or jurisprudence and sometimes is a very, very complicated and require very high level of competency to understand, you have challenge. So best thing is that engaging the student in the process. So generally what happens if they are prior read, so give them some kind of reading. They have to read before coming to the class, because if the class is fully read and they are coming to the class, you can start from certain level. So if you can't start the class from certain level, you can build up the interest. But if the class is totally blank, you cannot drive the class. So, but then how to motivate them to have the prior reading is very, very challenging. So you have to then set up your benchmark, set up your system. Because when I used to teach, I used to give in our course plan, we used to provide lecture-wise schedule, readings, pages and articles, everything is defined. So everybody was expected to read and come to the class. And in our time, we used to carry the Xerox copy of the case in the classroom. The faculty will check who has Xerox copy, who has not. Anybody is not having Barrett will be out from the class. But nowadays, because this is the model of the online medium, sometimes they will bring the mobile phone. They will say my case in mobile. I will see in the mobile. Sometimes if you see, they will be doing WhatsApp something else. So engaging student in the classroom is a different skill, and every faculty has a different model of engagement. Sometimes we suggest faculty to go extra miles. Try to be very friendly, try to be very close to them, talk to them. So if you are very close to them, and then in that case, they will be able to understand you better and you have very close connection with the student, and then imparting knowledge will be very easy for you. So becoming closer to them, becoming very friendly, very close to them, and then giving them prior reading, and then coming to the class, properly engaging them, and then you can build up the class from a certain level. This way you can create the interest in the classroom.
So next question is, in the current situation of COVID, assessing students via online mode seems to be a difficult task, since we are not able to differentiate genuine from fake excuse, such as lack of internet, network, etc. What do you suggest?
That is very challenging. See, those who are mature enough, those who understand the time, energy, actually they take serious interest. But everywhere, the students are there who take excuses. It's a very, very challenging question. How to really ensure that everybody, is listening the lectures. So one method is that you always go and check. Suppose, for example, I can check right now. There are 121 people are actually online, and then I can also then ask everybody to switch on their camera and can see who is listening, who is seeing me. So these are the methods. You can always check how many are online, ask them to switch on their camera, and sometimes ask questions. Sometimes directly name the person and ask question whether he was sleeping or he has switched off his video and gone for toilet or something. So you should have your own parameters to check the student engagement. And then you can, once you set up your benchmark, nobody will take liberty. Sometimes you don't know that he will never ask to switch on video, never ask to question, never name anybody and ask a question. So they are safe. So this case-to-case basis, faculty to faculty, how to set up. You should reinvent your own method, how to test the engagement of the student. Or you take 2 times the kind of you can just, the attendance in the beginning, at the end, in the medium, in the meantime, you just take the clip and take the screenshot and keep a record. And you can check that you are not there at that when you taken the screenshots. This way you can manage.
So last question. So we prepare lecture plan for teaching according to course outcome, but sometimes due to some extracurricular activities in the institutions, we have to deviate from that part. So, sir, can you suggest some effective measure to fulfill that gap?
That's why for this solution, what we adopted the lecture number model. So what can happen? For example, the lecture number 10 was a case analysis, and when the lecture number 10 was there, there was some kind of function or some holiday. So the next lecture, lecture number 10, so that will be shifted